This is Josh Klinghoffer in conversation with your host, Rob Bleedstein, on Pearl Jam Radio.
We're excited today to have the multi-talented musician Josh Klinghoffer with us on Pearl Jam Radio. Now a touring member of Pearl Jam and Earthling, Josh is well known for his time on guitar with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he's the force behind Pluralone and the new album, This Is the Show. Welcome, Josh, to Pearl Jam Radio.
Thank you so much.
You've been down quite a road, basically, since your teens, immersed in creating music and working with the Bicycle Thief, Butthole Surfers, John Bryan, Golden Shoulders, Beck, PJ Harvey, Sparks, Gnarls Barkley before the stint with the Chili Peppers. That's quite a little resume you got there.
I'm exhausted listening to it. Gosh.
Tell us about your early years and your influences, and do you see it all as like some natural progression that's now led you into the Pearl Jam universe?
I don't know how magical I can be, but I mean, there is something there. I do admit to sitting on my bedroom floor at like age 11 or 12 and just thinking, God, I wish I was friends with these guys. I would love to play music with them or just hang out with them. And I guess I could say that that's happened. I can't say any of that happened for a reason, but it's happened, and I couldn't be more thrilled and honored about it. The natural progression of just going through all those artists that you listed, all those wonderful artists. I mean, I always had this, I didn't make a rule with myself, but at one point I realized that I spend all my time playing with people that I love and respect. And I never really played music or worked with anyone that I wasn't a fan of. So I'm also very lucky for that. Natural progression. I mean, one thing that I always used to joke with myself about was that whether I was playing with, the Butthole Surfers or then Beck and PJ Harvey, the venue sizes I was playing always seemed to get bigger, as if I was playing with my own band and we were just releasing records and growing our fan base. I wasn't doing that. It wasn't my music we were playing, but I at least had something of a simulation of that. And then at some point in my late 20s, that became a little intolerable for me. And it started to bother me that I was never had time to focus on myself and my own music. And, I'd say I really had a rock bottom moment with that kind of those feelings in my late 20s, and then I joined the Chili Peppers. So I put anything that I had any realizations or anything I'd come to at that time on hold again for another couple of years, or not so much on hold. The Chili Peppers was allowed me to still kind of keep the band I'd formed right before I joined them, Dot Hacker, around for a bit, and we made records, and I was able to scratch that itch a little bit, but it wasn't a functioning band. So now Pluralone, which is a name that I suggested Dot Hacker be called and was, laughed at and rejected. So I should have probably taken that as a sign. But now I'm doing, quote unquote, my own thing, but with a little help from some old friends and some new friends. And it's, I guess it is one long ongoing story.
Cool. You have a lot of good things under your belt, and perseverance is probably a big part of that. What was your first, maybe break or person you hooked up with that got you from being that youngster in your room playing guitar out to doing gigs and playing with people that snowballed into where you are right now?
Probably be Bob Forrest. It would definitely be Bob Forrest, who I met and started playing with when I was about 17. Sort of my best friend from the neighborhood who lived around the corner. His sister was dating Bob, and Bob was newly sober. And Thelonious Monster had ceased to be a functioning band a couple years before, but Bob was looking to do something again because he's, kind of putting his life back together. And I was this little kid around the corner who had just started playing guitar, really. But I was a big fan of John Frusciante's solo record, and John and Bob were friends, and everyone in that family in that group had known each other for a long time. So I was just kind of this suggestion, like, oh, you should meet the little kid around the corner who's playing guitar. Somehow, a newly sober 36 or 37-year-old and a very shy 17-year-old made a record together. A year or two later, called You Come and Go as a pop song. And I think just because of how connecting and honest Bob's writing is, and, the fan base he had from Thelonious Monster, that record really meant a lot to, smallish but dedicated group of people. So that was my first experience making a record and being a part of music that meant something to people.
And then that shy teenager winds up doing the soundtrack score for the documentary on Bob Forrest.
Yes. And that shy teenager spoke for 90 minutes about Bob and was cut out of the film entirely. So maybe there's something to being shy.
You just got off a pretty intense Earthlings tour with Ed, and I was buzzing for a week after seeing only that first night at Benaroya Music Hall up in Seattle. So I can't imagine how you feel. Have you come down yet from that experience?
No, I don't think so. You were at the Seattle show. Great, because those were my two favorite shows of the tour. Those were fantastic. It was the strangest tour I've ever done just because of the emotional ride that was from beginning to end. I think I cut the come down a little bit by driving around and hanging out with Jeff. I was just up for a couple of days in Montana. So I've just returned to my house last night, basically from the Earthlings tour. That tour, starting the way it started, having that middle period, which was surprisingly depressing, like one of the lowest I've been in a long time. Just being trapped in the house with COVID, which is something I really tried to avoid and did a good job at avoiding for 2 years. I mean, to have picked it up, on the road, then especially being the first one and to get it and having to miss a show. I always look for silver linings. It was a pretty amazing experience to play at that venue with Eddie, where, that's a very meaningful place for him. He saw it's one of his first concerts, if not his first concert there. And then to watch the band I played with from my bed on FaceTime the next night.
You're referring to those auditorium theater shows in Chicago.
Yeah. And that first show there in Chicago was, I really felt like that was the first night we were all like, all right, we're good now. Because, always the first couple shows are a little, you're still figuring out what you're doing. And those were in New York, extra stress. Ed had just been sick himself. Like, there was lots of stress. And we played in New Jersey, and it was still like, we're coming out. And then the minute we got to Chicago, at the beginning of the show, I feel like I looked at Ed and we caught a glance at each other, and something in his eyes told me, I'm fucking ready now. This is my town. This is Chicago. And then we were all buzzing after that show, eating deep dish backstage, and then to wake up the next day and like right around sound check time, I called and said, I need to take a test.
The energy you guys have on stage was just, crazy, really reflected into the crowd as well. It's just a pleasure to watch, a pleasure to take in, a pleasure to scream along with some of those songs with you. What songs on this tour, and from this record, really stick out for you? If you could just, if you had one or two you had to pick.
The whole record, every song, just because we did it in such a furious kind of way. Every day we were working on a new song or coming up with something new and getting really excited about it. They all have a special memory to me. But, I'd say probably Brother the Cloud or Mrs. Mills. That song is just such a beautiful tribute to the Beatles and to Abbey Road Studios and to a particular piano and then a second piano. And then it's also a tribute to everything that Andrew Watt and his engineer Paul and Marco have created at Andrew's studio. And just the joy that goes on in that room between Andrew and Chad and myself and Ed when we were making the album. So yeah, it's just for me, just all the emotion that's conveyed in that song. Again, watching it being pushed out into a room full of people, and then having the added pressure of not screwing up the piano, and and then having a moment where it's just Ed and I playing. For me, those are special moments. One of the greatest and most fun things for me on that tour was if I started a song, was kind of listening to Ed speak about it ahead of time and just trying to catch the perfect beat to start the song on. So, I felt like Mrs. Mills, that was one where, if he said something like, the song's about a piano, and then I start or whatever it is. So, yeah, those two stand out.
Let's give a listen now. Here's Mrs. Mills from Eddie Vedder and the Earthlings. We're with Josh Klinghoffer here on Pearl Jam Radio. All right, we're back with Josh Klinghoffer here on Pearl Jam Radio. Tell us about your history with Andrew Watt, when you started working together and the first time you came into Ed's universe in terms of creating together.
I can't remember exactly when I met Andrew, because it would have been in the last 5 years or so. Him and Chad had formed a real tight friendship and a musical relationship in the last couple of years. And he's a big Chili Pepper fan, so he would come to the shows. And I met him as Chad's friend a couple of times. But I wasn't sure what they had worked on together. I just knew him as Chad's friend. And I'd hear, oh, he's a musician, producer, and he's a great guitar player. Cool. He's 10 years younger than me or something like that. So, in those 5 years, I met him 5 or 6 years ago, he was 25 at the time. So then the last year or so I was in the band, we did these sporadic trips abroad. We went to Japan, we went to Brazil. We did these long trips, and they would only be a week or half a week or something. And Andrew would just come because he's a fan and he's friends with Chad, and it kind of bolsters his soul to see that band play. So after a while, it's just like, oh, Andrew's part of the touring group. And, he came to Egypt. That was another thing. He was in Egypt, which is one of the most special things the band's ever done. So Andrew was kind of sharing these beautiful experiences. When we played Rock in Rio on my 40th birthday, Andrew was there. So Andrew, just by his ability to kind of be a part of that group, just became a friend, a tight friend. And then he and I would talk about music. And he's the first person to be around that makes it to where I'm not the youngest person in the room anymore. So that was an interesting experience for me to no longer be, the absolute youngster in any given situation. But yeah, he and I just kind of formed this connection because he was around for these special moments. And then as it turned out, my last year in the band. But then also, just more importantly, his friendship with Chad and his musical connection with Chad is something that I just think is beautiful. And watching those two hang out and FaceTime each other and play music with each other and for each other, it's a wonderful thing. I was just over at Andrew's a lot last year. Getting to work with Chad again, and it was a beautiful thing on many levels, musically, personally. And then I went to New York for a couple months to finish up some writing for this album that's coming out now. This is the show. And Ed called me out of the blue to see if I would do this Facts Live performance with him. And I think he thought I was in L.A., and I was actually in New York, so I flew back to L.A. It's my first time getting on a plane. That was a great trip. And Andrew was someone that was on Eddie's radar for a while. They had met, and then they'd hung out at shows here and there. But just the confluence of all those kind of things, the success Andrew's had and the records that Chad and I have made with him. And, Ed kind of just, he was in California for that Vax Live show. He liked being there. It was the summertime. And, yeah, he just checked out Andrew's house and saw the vibe that Andrew's created there down in the basement in the studio. I mean, it happened so fast. I mean, I think as I remember it, I got there 5 minutes after Ed did on the first day, and he had said, I think, because I wasn't there yet, he had said, yeah, I didn't get a chance to exercise as much as I would have liked this morning. Can I play some drums? So he was playing drums, and I came down the stairs 5 minutes later, and, about 15 minutes later, we had The Power of Right. We had the music for The Power of Right. And then I think while we were writing the music for Power of Right, Ed was strumming a guitar, recorded the chord progression for the halves, and I think by the end of the next night we had the halves. So back in May, around the Vax Live show, we had 2 songs, maybe like 2.5 songs, and then after having 2 songs that Andrew and I and Ed were all so excited about, it was just kind of a logical step to make a record. So in July, we got Chad to come home from his family vacation, and we did basically the rest of it then.
So it sounds like a total organic, natural thing that just snowballed into greatness.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm glad you think it's greatness. It definitely came together quickly, and it was, very, very exciting.
In terms of Andrew being the youngest, I have to mention that you are the youngest person ever inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That's right.
As a Chili Pepper.
Yes. And, the rules, it's like gerrymandering, redrawing the districts and redrawing the rules for who gets in and who doesn't, which is always, kind of sad and political and whatever and strange. But I got in because of the rules that were in place at that particular time. And it's an enormous honor, just as I've always said, to have my name next to any of those guys, let alone in a Hall of Fame. But, to me, the real Hall of Fame moments were the playing on stage with those guys every night. It was more about the experience. I don't think I deserve to be in a Hall of Fame because of what I've achieved in the past. But, then again, maybe I'm just a Hall of Famer.
We're here with Hall of Famer Josh Klinghoffer here on Pearl Jam Radio.
It certainly makes me fit in Pearl Jam.
Yeah, there you go. We'll get into your Pluralone album. This is the show in a minute here. I want to take things to the stage first for a minute, as you're now a touring member of Pearl Jam. Your first gig as a touring member of Pearl Jam was at the See Here Now Festival in Asbury Park last September. What was it like getting that call? And tell us what's going on back there in terms of you're back behind Mike, and it seems like there's a multitude of instruments you're working with, keyboards, guitars, I don't know what else. Give us a little insight into what's going on back there.
Well, let's see. I feel like that it couldn't have been a better place to play your first show with them, just because I have so much of my family lives in and comes from New Jersey. So that was meaningful to me on that level. But then also outdoors on the beach, looking at I have some amazing photos of Mike and the guys, that's particularly of Mike, sound checking with the ocean right there. And I just think the sea air and, the fact that it's the Annie Clinch's festival, and just it felt like Ohana East, it felt like a home show basically. And it was definitely an easy way or an easy place to ease back into live performance after the year plus we had all just had, and the fact that the tour had been postponed. And we basically had to work twice to get into shape to do it. And the moment that Gigaton was released and the excitement around that tour they'll never be able to recreate that. It's a year and a half later, but the anticipation and the excitement was still there when we walked out on stage. And I can't remember the set list that night, but for me, I mean, if I remember correctly, we opened with Dance.
Yes.
So, I mean, for me, that was the song that I was, that's one of the biggest jobs I have. I got a couple things to do in that song besides the singing, percussion and drums and percussion, all this stuff. So it's a lot for me in that song. And I kind of think of it as the reason I was brought along, because that song was an important part of the record, and it really needs those layered vocals at the end. So we open with that song, and once that drum beat started and Stone comes in on the bass, Jeff with the keyboard, I mean, it's just off and running. I love that song. And so getting back to what I said earlier about being able to play stuff that you're a fan of, I listened to that song 1,000 times in a row, I just love it, and I get to play it with people. I can't convey how happy I am about all that.
All right, let's give it a whirl. Here's Dance of the Clairvoyants, the first version with Josh Klinghoffer in Pearl Jam from Asbury Park, 9/18/21 here on Pearl Jam Radio. Klinghoffer here on Pearl Jam Radio, and let's talk about your new Pluralone album, This Is the Show. What I like from just the few listens I've had so far, it takes me on like a sonic journey. Each track carves out its own like particular landscape. It starts out like with this heavy Nine Inch Nails kind of synth opening on the song The Fight for the Soul. And then you shift into this acoustic, almost, Tom Petty like strumming on the song Offend. Do you approach your records and your music with just like, there's no limits whatsoever, anything's possible?
Well, anything's possible, I would usually say, yeah, but in particular on this album, it's the first time that I've sort of let go of the reins a bit from a production standpoint. And the idea for the album was born out of my old band Dot Hacker trying to do a record together again, but in 2020. So it's going to be remote, everyone in their own place, kind of sharing files. And Clint Walsh was going to be the sort of producer of that project. And just maybe because we were all separate, it just didn't take off. But the principal kind of workflow of that project was I write it, give one instrument and a vocal, and I'm done. So whatever Clint comes up with when he reacts to the music, which is not normally how a band is, like you do it together in a room, which is what I've grown up wanting to do. And so this was, we did it at a particular time where that wasn't really possible. And he's just developed these wonderful skills and this wonderful ability to react to a piece of music if he likes it and just really let it sink in. And then he starts going at it like a painter / bricklayer / carpenter. He's just building and building and building. And that's how this album took shape. And I got excited about the possibility of doing a Dot Hacker album, and I wrote 10, 12 songs really fast, and I sent them, and I was done with them. And then that freed me up to basically do the Morrissey stuff and anything else I was working on at Andrews, and then go to New York and just kind of be there for a bit and finish some writing, and then do the Ed's record. And I basically washed my hands of these songs for a while and let Clint just kind of go to town on them. He would check in with me every once in a while, but after 2020 being, like a 5 mile an hour type year, 2021 somehow became like a, 85 mile an hour type year. And next thing you knew, it was sort of October, first time I kind of had a breather. And then Clint and I were basically, we were ready to kind of join up again. And we finished. Like, we took everything that he had done with what I had sent him and written, and we kind of finished it together at the end of last year. And I was really trying to get it out before the end of last year and just have a timestamp on it. That's at 2021. And I think I stressed a lot of people out by wanting that. But here we are in March, and I'm very happy about it. And again, I've said this to a couple of people. I mean, for me, it's always exciting to put a record out and always exciting to make a record and to have a batch of songs. But this record in particular for me was about so much more than music. It was, like I said, it was about letting go, and it was about kind of, the friendship I have with Clint and I've had since we played in Gnarls Barkley together, and which is, 16 years ago or so now. And just kind of letting that be the driving force, and kind of, if there was ever something musical that was like, not my first instinct, or, it felt so good to listen and be open and just watch myself like it and grow to love it. And, so that's, I mean, it's almost a gift to have an experience like that when you're making a record.
So it's just you and he creating this entire thing together. There's no other band members.
No, there's no other band members. It's just he and I basically performing it all, and I wrote the songs. But we were able to get the drummer Eric Gardner, who played with us in Dot Hacker. Since it started as a band project, there were a couple of, I had said to him, send me some drums, just record yourself playing, and I'll write to those. So I did that with a couple of songs. There's 3 songs on the record that I wrote to, just a drum beat of his. And then we were able to get one of my favorite musicians and favorite people on planet Earth, Eric Avery, to play some bass on it. There's one song, Claw Your Way Out, which I think has been out for a little while. That song, Eric, Clint, and Eric, 2 Erics and a Clint, and me recorded together. It's the only song we did live together in the studio. And then Vanessa Freebaron-Smith plays cello on the last song. But apart from that, it's really just Clint and I.
Let's give a listen to the song Offend from Pluralone on SiriusXM's Pearl Jam Radio. Josh Klinghoffer here on Pearl Jam Radio. We're talking about Josh's new record from Pluralone called This Is the Show. The song Scape, it's kind of led by the drums are pretty dominant. Is it you mentioned that your drummer had given you just random things for you to write to. Is that a loop I'm hearing on that? And then it's entwined with your keyboard work. It's like, it's got just this great feel to it right off the bat in the song. So is that a loop or something that Clint created?
No, I think that's a live take of drums. Eric Gardner, just like everyone when in 2020, when their entire calendar got ripped up, it's like, what do I do? How do I still be creative? And Eric started recording himself more because he's been touring a lot lately. So he bought a couple microphones and started learning how to do that. So I think each time he sent me drums for Fight for the Soul, Any More Alone, and then Scape was the last one. And I think you can hear the 2 different sonic approaches to the drums are just him experimenting with microphones. But no, I don't think it's a loop. It's him rocking. But I'm pretty sure that's a live take. At one point, perhaps I assembled it a little bit and extended it here or there. But there's still there's a couple, I think in one of the later choruses, there's a drum dropout. And that was because that's where Eric had it. And I just thought it sounded great to have the drums drop out for a bar or 2 or whatever it is there.
It meshes really well with your keyboard work. Do you write equally on piano and guitar?
Yeah. These days, I'd say pretty equally. There was a time where it was heavily favored toward piano, which is something I'd say I'm the least proficient at. But it's really fun for me to write on piano. But yeah, I'd say this album is a pretty even mix.
Let's give a listen here. This is the song "Scape" from Pluralone on SiriusXM's Pearl Jam Radio. Okay, so the long-awaited Gigaton tour, it's finally going to kick off in May. Obviously crushing that you were on the runway, ready to take off, and the pandemic hit and enabled you to do all these other things, and everyone else do all these other things, as well as stay alive. So I can only imagine you got to be pretty charged up right now, getting ready to hit the road as the first tour as a touring member of Pearl Jam.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've had 2 small helpings of it, and it's just still as thrilling as it was the first day I spoke with Ed about it. That's like just the feelings that are going through me as I am around those guys and listening to them play. Even if I'm not playing, I have the best seat in the house.
When you got that phone call, were you just blown away?
Blown away. like mind blown emoji. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was 8 days after I left the other band, so I had a week of wondering what my life looked like, and it was a very strange week. And then I was sitting at this very table, and I spoke to Ed for 45 minutes or so, and it was his birthday, and so it's late December. The evening light in this room is really nice. It was just, I can't describe it. It's pretty magical. I honestly feel this. I feel that feeling every time I'm around these guys.
Beautiful. And Pluralone will be opening these shows coming up?
Yes. Yeah, I have to figure out how to do that, because it was never my intention to be a solo performer. These records, or the first two I made, were very much solo albums, with the exception of having Jack Irons play or Eric Avery play some bass here or there. But, logistically and, for a couple of those type reasons, I'm just going to do these shows by myself. I hope along the way I'll have some guests with me that, that play in the headlining band. But essentially it'll just be me. But I've never prepared for that. I don't know how to do that. I've never done that ever. I mean, the longest show I played was at Ohana, and I feel like that was a 50-50, kind of success rate. Some of that was a train wreck. Some of it was fun and beautiful for me. But I really got a lot out of watching Glenn Hansard every night on this last month on the Earthlings tour, watching what he does with a room, and again with the energy in a room, and the getting people in the place for the Earthling band to walk out. I mean, Glenn has just set the table so beautifully for the night to become what it is. And I've been to many a show in my life, and I've seen many an opening act that don't do that. And if I can achieve half of what I saw Glenn do night after night, then I'll be in good shape. But as of yet, I don't know exactly what that looks like.
Your guitarist may be in for a hell of a beating.
Yes, that's true. No, I know.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really look forward to seeing you out on the road, and congrats on the release of This Is the Show from Pluralone.
Thank you, Rob.
Really look forward to seeing you out on the road. It's going to, everyone is so jonesed to see the guys back in action, and we can't wait.
Yeah, thank you so much. I can't wait either.
Thanks a lot. Josh Klinghoffer joining us here on SiriusXM's Pearl Jam Radio.
You just heard Josh Klinghoffer in conversation on Pearl Jam Radio. Catch it again tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern, or anytime with the SXM app. Just search Josh Klinghoffer.